What's up? This is the Weird, Fat, and Sober podcast. I'm joined by my good friend Travis Guggenstein. Guggenstein. What's up, doggy?
Hey, what's going on, dude?
I'm trying to think. I've known you pretty much all of my sobriety except for the first 60 days I was in treatment.
Yeah.
So I've known you
when you showed up to IOP with an acoustic guitar, and I was like, another fucking one of these guys. Then you actually knew how to play it.
Oh, yeah.
And had meaningful lyrics, and I was like, oh, he's pretty neat.
Just coming there playing Wonderwall and just flexing on the chicks in IOP.
You guys ever listen to the Animals album by Pink Floyd?
That's literally one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums. I defended it against somebody the other day. It was you.
It was me, yeah. It was me. I was talking shit on Sheep.
Yeah.
I was like, Dogs is the only good song. You're like, how dare you say that?
Well, that's true. Dogs is the best song on that album, but it makes all of the other stuff worth it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes it worth it.
How you doing, man? How's your semester wrapping up? Last one, right?
No, August is when I graduate.
Okay, cool.
So I got another like 2/3 of a year to pile through. 37 credits to knock out.
Damn.
Probably 36 credits, so 21 in the spring and then 15 over the 2 summer semesters.
Right.
And try to start grad school in the fall.
15 in a summer semester?
Over the 2 summer semesters,
Fuck
yeah. I
that.
had to get an overload permit from
Good
Viance.
God, you're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
How's the recovery industry treating you?
Dude, it's pretty interesting because like I've been in it now for a minute. Because I guess I technically started with Choices.
Okay, yeah.
Which would have been October 2017, and then there's a little hiatus when I was just living with Russell and working at Mattress Firm. But then I started out at the facility, the Inpatient Ranch, July 2018, and I've been working for them. I'm still working for them now. So I've worked in treatment industry for about 2 years now,
right?
Close to 2 years, and I've worked inpatient and sober living.
Yeah.
For 2 different companies.
What's harder, inpatient or the sober living?
Oh, inpatient.
For sure.
Your worst problem in sober living is someone coming back high.
Right.
And having to deal with that. That is a normal occurrence at inpatient.
Right.
Yeah, like
fuck.
Your worst problem in inpatient is when you have, RA, recovery advocate, basically techs, adult babysitters mixed with drivers, mixed with occasionally we get to provide, like support and guidance.
Right.
Amazing, beautiful job. But in terms of like the ratio of staff to client, it can be tough. Like if the hardest situations I would wind up in is, we'd have like 3 RAs on a shift, right? One of them would be down at the hospital because they had to follow a client who had to get ambulanced out. And the other one would be getting clients ready for a transport to a meeting. And you would be the only RA on campus. And we have 40 to 45 clients on campus.
Fuck.
And you have to do checks on all of them because the nurses would help out where they could, but they're also dispensing meds.
Yeah.
And if it's past 5 or 6, there's no counselors on campus. So you're just running around trying to take care of everything. You'd get 5 or 6 tasks on your plate and just constantly like dropping small things. And it's hard because you'd have to balance like the stuff you have to get done on shift. So that would be like observation sheets, notes in the program we use, Sigmund, which was like for recording all notes for insurance and legal purposes. And also like just quality on clients, like follow up and observation, just like, hey, I talked with client about this is how they're doing. Their counselor can go in and check that, and it helps with their continuum of care there too. And on top of that, a client is like, can I get my cologne from the closet? And it's like, I'm doing 4 other things.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I want to smell good now. And it was funny because I learned working there that sometimes like spending that extra minute getting them cologne would put out a fire like 2 hours later of them just getting pissed off because like when I was an inpatient I was just an absolute shitbird.
Oh yeah.
And so like sometimes it was worth it just to spend that extra minute.
Right. I feel like I was pretty like calm and inpatient, like just because like I was so like broken that I was just like, and plus the place I went to was really nice. Yeah. And so when I got there I was just like, I can breathe. Like I don't have to worry about like
I don't have to die.
Yeah, and like my meals are taken care of. Like one of my coworkers just went back to treatment after relapsing, like yesterday actually. Shit. And I was like, dude, and he'd never been to treatment. He went straight from active addiction into IOP and sober living, which is, and he got like some time, like a few months, doing that, which is kind of remarkable, I think. But I was just telling him, I was like, dude, inpatient, like. It sucks because you like emotionally you're like not prepared to deal with your shit, but it's like you're kind of just getting a break from reality.
Yeah, I always joke with when I worked up there, And with clients in sober living and other people in the recovery community that have been through inpatient, I joke with them about this. And to people that haven't been through inpatient treatment, if they ask what it's like, I use the same joke. Like, it's the world's weirdest mix of county jail and summer camp.
Like exactly.
Personally, I never had to go to jail. I was just a white male in Colorado Springs driving drunk. So, I mean, as long as I didn't break a law, obviously I was safe.
Yeah.
But I did a psych hospital. So I guess more aptly, it's a weird mix of a psych hospital and summer camp,
Oh, yeah.
It's like crush vibes and music and drama. But then also, like, you got to be in bed by this time. And also, someone may have just died.
Yeah.
Someone may have just eloped and died. So it's a really... Dude, it's so hot and cold and inpatient. It goes from like haha funny cute to deadly serious in like a fucking second sometimes.
I remember the house manager at the house I stayed at, like, he was really cool, but like he would have these moments where he got really serious about stuff, and I'd be like, why? Like, what's going on? What's wrong? And it's like, oh, well, a client that was here 6 months ago just died, and I found out, or something like that. And it's just, it's a weird environment, because it's like, I remember being there, and like I had a lot of happy, fun times because I was just like feeling good, feeling better about my life and situation, and like making friends with my roommates and everything, But then it's like serious too, so it's a weird vibe,
It's the bipolarism of it. It's like the hormones and emotional highs of high school just condensed into 30 days. The first 3 days is figuring out what clique you're gonna be with for the rest of your time there, basically. And then the next 7 days are being super dedicated to groups and like also hanging out with your clique. And then weeks 2 and 3 are like usually finding some unhealthy romantic partner if it's co-ed treatment, right? Or if you're married, arguing with your wife. And then the last week is usually like, I just want to get the fuck out of here and be done. That's what I've watched, again and again and again. I was not the model client in treatment at all. In my head, I thought I was.
Right.
I was like, I'm so smart, and I get all these groups. But I also got high 3 times and kicked in a door. So, objectively speaking, I don't think I was calm. Yeah,
and you didn't go to treatment here in Lubbock, right? You went to treatment in Colorado and then came here?
In New Mexico, up in Taos. Yeah, I went to this place called Shadow Mountain up in Taos. It was a 90-day all-male treatment center, inpatient. It was on this mountain up in Carson National Forest. There's like this 4-mile dirt road. Like you'd just be driving. There's this road that would connect Taos to Angel Fire, and I don't know the name of it. There's like a little 2-lane highway through the mountains.
Right.
There's just a dirt turnoff. There's just 4 miles up this mountain. I shit you not. You're going up this dirt road that barely fits the van that we're in, the little druggy buggy, right? And you pull up, and there is like a metal gate with one camera and one light, and I'm not even joking. Wooden palisades, like those giant wooden stakes from like Braveheart. Like it was those. That was the wall.
All right.
Yeah, because it was like sheltered in the back of this little valley, and so there was a wooden palisade wall with a gate.
Yeah, it looked like it's been there since 1840.
Yeah, like Kit Carson himself just like swung down after an expedition and like, boom, let's get drug addicts sober. I don't know.
That's cool. I mean, was it a lot of outdoors based type stuff? Like, did y'all hike and do shit like that, or?
Towards the end of my stay, yeah. The only reason that we didn't is I was there December 6th to March 6th. And it was a pretty brutal winter, and so we just couldn't do a whole lot of outdoor stuff. We went skiing like every weekend, but I can't ski to save my life.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Somebody from Colorado that doesn't ski.
Dude, yeah. I think I've skied and snowboarded 3 times in my life, and all 3 times have not been good.
Oh, yeah.
I think the first time when I was a kid, I don't remember nothing bad happened other than I fucked up going down a hill. My mom tried to save my ass, and she tore her ACL real bad.
Fuck.
The second time I was with my friend David up at Keystone when I was in high school. We're at the top of this mountain, and he was trying to take me down the bunny slope, like the one at the top of the mountain. There was like a real slow grade, right?
Right.
And I fell into a black diamond.
Fuck.
After about 100 yards, I just took my board off, and I spent 4 hours walking down this mountain. I almost died because I fell into a little ravine, and like the snow is packed so hard up there. And if it gets wet, it freezes on top. And so, like, if you fall in certain areas, you just slide.
Right.
Like it's concrete almost.
Yeah.
And I was heading straight towards a rock. Oh. And luckily, like, my feet sunk in right before, and I, like, went like that.
Oh, yeah.
And my head in the snow, like, 2 feet before the rock, board, like, bounced off, scratched the hell out of it. I was walking down this mountain this whole time. I'm like, I just can't wait to get to the bottom and get high. Like, I hate this. I want to go home. And long story short, I almost interrupted the qualifier for the X Games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was walking down. There's this little service road. I was like, this has to be a shortcut. And I take this little service road, and I come out of the trees. and about less than 100 yards in front of me is a half pipe.
Oh
Where
shit.
people are competing, and there's like a crowd watching and cameras, and I'm just like standing there, and I'm so selfish of a person that I was so selfish and so tired that I debated just walking through and just not caring.
All right.
But obviously, I'm too terrified of people judging me, so
Yeah.
I just took the longer way down.
That's funny.
Found David, and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" I was like, "Let's get in your car and smoke weed. I want to leave. I hate this."
That's great. I never done the whole skiing thing. Just poor, but we're too poor to do anything like that. We went to Six Flags in summers. That was it.
Yeah, I was just blessed growing up. Like both my parents, my mom didn't make a whole lot of money. She was a high school teacher, still is. My dad made good money, doing data hardware sales, usually to military branches and stuff like that. As far as I know, I had everything I ever needed, most things I wanted. My family was pretty frugal.
Right.
There was like a period of like a year growing up. My dad was in between jobs where my mom got like real creative with Velveeta cheese and hot dogs. And she did a damn good job because I didn't even know we were poor for a year.
Right.
I didn't even know. I mean, I knew they were arguing about groceries every Sunday, but I was like, this is what adult married couples do. They write out in their schedule, let's fight about food every Sunday.
Right. Yeah. So the Taos treatment, you didn't really do much outdoor stuff, but I mean, how long were you there? You said 90 days?
Yeah, I was there 90 days. Towards the end, we got to go on some hikes and stuff, which was pretty neat.
Nice.
Yeah, I was there 90 days.
Is that the only treatment you've done?
Yeah, that's the only inpatient treatment I've ever done. I've only done one detox, one inpatient, one IOP.
Me too.
So far.
We are the elite few.
On wood. There's wood in this room.
It's wood right here.
It's drywall.
It's a wall. There's wood in there somewhere.
Get the stud finder.
So, what was the circumstances leading you to go to treatment? I mean, I know I've heard you share in 12-step meetings before a little bit, but I've never really heard it just fully presented. I mean, what was the situation like?
I was a quick burn, man. I think I had like a couple drinks growing up as a kid, like sneaking some beer or like some wine off my parents at Christmas, like a sip here and there growing up as a kid. And like I always wanted to be drunk.
Right.
Because every time like adults drank, they didn't argue, they just laughed. I remember being like 4 in Mexico, my dad got drunk on tequila, like the only time, 1 or 3 times in my life I've seen him drunk.
Right.
And he was like pole dancing in a sombrero. And I was like, that's amazing. As a little kid, I was like, that looks fantastic. So, but I got drunk for the first time when I was 15, and then I got sober when I was 18.
Right.
I never got into like heroin or crack or meth. Never did cocaine or Molly or ecstasy or acid or mushrooms. Like I never got into any of that stuff. Not for lack of trying. Just people didn't think I was cool enough, quite honestly. Like the kids that I hung out with in high school did that kind of stuff, and they would not let me do it with them.
Right.
They would do, they would take acid.
Man, you don't want none of this.
Rather, they'd pop 2 tabs and watch Off the Air on Adult Swim.
Oh my
And
God.
I'd be the asshole sitting there nursing a beer because they didn't buy me a tab because they're like, he's too fucking depressed to trip ass. I don't want to hear him talk about it. But leading up to it, going into treatment, I was 18. I was living with my parents, rent free. I was just getting fired, like from minimum wage job after minimum wage job.
Right.
Working there for like 2 days a week, couple weeks, getting fired, for not showing up or showing up late because I'm drunk or just not showing up and not calling in. At that point, I was drinking vanilla extract. Was my main deal because I was under 21. No one would buy for me.
Right.
Every time I drank, like out came the racial slurs and the screaming and the fighting and like all the stuff that isn't who I am, but like who I was for sure.
What racial slurs did you say? I'm just kidding.
And so no one would buy liquor or anything from me, obviously. Yeah. And so I Googled 11 household things that get you high.
Oh, fuck.
And that's how I got into vanilla extract and keyboard cleaner and huffing gasoline, too.
Dude, like, I know that you like probably feel like, oh, I didn't get into anything hardcore like heroin or meth, but it's like that shit is way more hardcore than heroin or meth, dude. Like, fuck. I mean, I feel like huffing itself is like one of the most dangerous ways to get high, and it is like, it's so bizarre. I mean, I know I've done it. I've done it on accident, and I've done it. Like, I've done air duster, and I hated it. But
you didn't like the wump wumps?
No, like every time I did it like 3 times, and every time I did it, I immediately had a migraine afterwards. And I was like, and it's like, and then it's like, oh fuck, my head
hear the light bulbs.
Like I remember I was like 18 working at this pizza place, and I found some keyboard duster or whatever the fuck, and took it into the bathroom and like, hit it, and I just immediately was sick afterwards. Like I needed to go home. They're like, "What happened?" I was like, "Oh no."
A little weird side fact about the computer keyboard industry. So they caught on in the mid 2000s that kids were getting yeeted off their keyboard cleaner.
Yeah,
they were just getting spiked on it. They put bitterant in it. They put in this chemical that specifically tastes bitter, so kids would stop huffing it.
Oh,
obviously that didn't work. It just made it a shittier experience.
Right.
But I remember because I'd hit it, and be like, my mouth tastes like old ass. Like it just tastes awful, like a mix of burnt rubber and dirty laundry.
Just chemical bullshit. Yeah,
dude.
It's terrible. So I mean, what was like the breaking point of like, what was the event that occurred to make you go to treatment? I mean, did your parents catch you or?
Oh yeah. So I'd been like lying for months. I had already like tried. No, I didn't really try it, but I'd already gone to 12-step meetings and lied there and like not stayed sober.
Oh really? So you were doing 12-step meetings around 18?
Yeah. The first 12-step meeting I ever went to was April 10th. It was like April 10th or April 12th of 2016. Basically, I went up to Fort Collins. I'd started a bender earlier that week. My best friend David, his dad died, and they're Russian Orthodox Jewish, so they don't believe in embalming. So his dad died on a Sunday night, like 11 p.m. So we had to have the funeral for the next 3 days before the body started decomposing.
Fuck.
And so the funeral was on a Wednesday. And so on Tuesday, I got vodka from a classmate from this community college chemistry class at Pikes Peak Community College. And I left that school with a 0.0 GPA.
Fuck.
But yeah, I got vodka from her Tuesday. I got blitzed Tuesday night, woke up drunk Wednesday, kept drinking, went to the funeral drunk. Went to the wake drunk, blacked out some point there, drove home, knocked a mirror off the car, blamed it on drunk Russians. It was not their fault. I remember actually what I did. I clipped not a yield sign, but like an upcoming, it's one of those yellow signs that shows impending curve.
Right.
I clipped it because I wasn't paying attention to the impending curve. And,
you should have another sign that's like sign impending curve.
Exactly. Yeah, hey, don't clip this because you might be drunk. And I stole a bottle of vodka from the cafe that they were doing the wake at. Went up to Fort Collins the next day and just kept going. Bad bender.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of bad stuff that it took over a year. I actually just recently finally finished amends to my best friend Arden for what happened that night.
Right.
So that happened April 9th of 2016. And as of 5 days ago, finally fully made things right with her.
Right.
Yeah, my parents were just like, if you want to keep living here and not be homeless, you got to go to this 12-step group. Right. My dad's mom is an alcoholic and addict. She died. I never got to really meet her. Met her when I was 2, don't remember her. But she was using my entire life. And so my dad knew the deal.
Right.
And my mom was really close with her great aunt. Weird age deal, but her aunt was only about like 5 years older than her.
Oh, wow.
And they grew up like sisters, basically. And she died, I think, a year before my dad's mom. She died of liver failure due to alcohol and cocaine abuse, and she had been in and out of 12 steps. So my mom knew the deal too.
Right.
And they were like, "Yeah, you can like go to meetings and get sober, fuck off, and be homeless." And so I was in their house, and I was like, "I have no capacity to be homeless." So yeah, I'll go sit in a room for an hour.
Yeah.
At that point, like I was starting to want to be sober. Like I knew I was powerless over alcohol and drugs. Every time I started doing them, just things went haywire.
Right.
But I still thought at that point, like I could just kind of get things straight for a while. I wouldn't give up drinking forever, just for a little bit.
Did y'all grow up religious at all, or I mean, yeah.
That's an interesting aspect too. Like I grew up pretty much in the non-denominational church.
Okay,
in
me too.
Springs. So Colorado Springs is an interesting place.
Like, what's the level that your family believed in? Like, I grew up non-denominational, Pentecostal, like, like faith healing, tongues, all that.
So non-denominational and Pentecostal.
Yeah, they're two different things, but
it's all good. I know what you mean. That
right.
kind of like.
I'm just curious as what you like.
I grew up.
What was the craziest belief that it was accepted in the church you grew up in?
I'll be honest, it's hard for me to remember because I didn't pay much attention.
Right.
As a kid.
I was just curious.
My parents were pretty involved in the church when I was growing up. There's this church called Pulpit Rock in Colorado Springs. Building's still there. Church is still there. And we went like every Sunday and every Wednesday.
Right.
You know, and like all my parents' friends were through the church. Like these friends, we'll just call them the Johnsons that like I grew up with. We knew them through church.
Right.
And like another ones, we'll call them the W's. Like we knew them through church. You know, and I remember as a kid, I was probably 5 when Katrina happened, or 6. And my dad and some of his buddies took this big toy hauler my dad had just bought. He'd saved up for, I don't know, probably close to a decade, because we loved to go camping and ATVing, and he'd worked his ass off. And him and his buddies just bought like all these cases of water and filled up this trailer and drove down to New Orleans to just give water to people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they just did that for 2 weeks and then came back. And my mom was super involved. And then probably when I was about 10 or 11, my dad just stopped going to church altogether. He just stopped. I don't know, what happened. I've talked to him about it a little bit over the past year.
Right.
You know, for him, like he ran into some ideological conflicts with other people started telling him how he should live. And to him, faith is not the church. Faith is a personal relationship with a higher power.
Right.
The thing he always told me is religion is man and faith is God.
That's cool. I like that.
And so, for him, he just like started going his own path. And my mom got distant for a while, but I'd say for about 8 years now, she's been very devout, very involved, as much as she can be, from South Korea. But she's very involved in a personal way and has always been really heavy with scripture,
right,
and with talking about Jesus. When I was going through addiction, asked me if I accepted it yet. When I got sober, I started talking about God. And she's like, I'm so happy, that you've accepted Christ in your heart. And I was like, hold.
I didn't say that.
Hey, Mom, I love you, but no.
I didn't sign up for the cult yet.
No. And now I'm actually looking at, going back to that faith, like not exactly the same type of Christian faith I grew up with, but just like looking back at Christianity. And there's a guy Skylar is the guy that I've been talking to about
right.
that. I'm going to get coffee with him hopefully this week. Look at maybe like discipleship. And I was like, I don't know, man,
Right.
It's that point of emotional sobriety where like that relationship with a higher power has to grow deeper and more personal. Because I got sober and needed a higher power to be sober.
Right.
Right. And at that time that was personal enough.
Right.
It was like, all right, I'm a fucking junkie. I don't know what to do with my life. Like, take it God thing. Right. And that became personal.
Yeah.
But like, as I've gone through recovery, and other people have told me their experience too, like as I've gone through recovery and other people too, reach this point where, like the 12 steps are a way of living. They are not life itself.
Right.
They are a framework so I can do life, which means I can't just hide in the rooms and pretend like that's the only thing that exists. Like I have to go do life and the rooms and sponsorship. I have to do both. There has to be some type of, not really balance, but there has to be work in both.
Right.
Which means that relationship has to become about more than just necessity, to truly like be growing in constant connection, almost at this exponential rate of growth. If not exponential, then at least constantly, gradually, at any rate increasing. Then it has to switch from pure necessity to this actual internal want.
Right.
And
like a real relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Keegan has said it really well. There's a guy he knew down in Dallas who talked about how his relationship with a higher power started off like a forced arranged marriage.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, it's me and it's God, and like we're gonna have to work together, and I hate him and I think he hates me, and like we have to work together. So I start because I have to, and then over time we get to know each other, and like this love starts to actually build. It becomes personal.
Right. I like that comparison.
Which I am not condoning forced marriage, but that analogy made sense to me.
Yeah.
It starts off with this necessity, and at some point it becomes personal. You die.
Right.
That's what I've watched.
Oh, for sure. And that's like, I can relate to that a lot because like, you know me since I pretty much got sober, and like the first year of my sobriety was like pretty strictly Christian, like I was very active in the church.
You were playing in the band. And you were active. You were down at the church probably, if I remember correctly, 2 or 3 times a week.
For sure. And it was a big part of my life, and like I'm super grateful for it. But like spiritually, I kind of outgrew it because like, and I had all these questions that have never been resolved, that I've always had since I was a kid and grew up in the church, and so I had to like come to this place with my relationship with my higher power and God, that like all these things I was feeling about myself because of the faith I was trying to practice, like are not what my higher power wants for me to feel like shit about myself every time I fucking look at porn, or every time I've, and so I had to kind of come to this place where I was like, I'm going to have this relationship with God, the universe, all that, and like, it's going to be what feels right, and not this like, I don't know, this weird like tug and pull where I like feel shitty about myself and then I use God or the church or worship or encounters or whatever to like, I use it like I would use drugs, you know, like
change how I feel. Yeah, you do the same thing with steps and meetings. Like,
oh, for sure,
fucking sponsor 10 guys and do all this fifth step. So everyone thinks I'm someone, so it changes how I feel. Yeah,
right.
Like faith without works is dead for sure, and like works without faith is also dead. Like doing shit just to change how I feel, like it's just a more complicated way of getting high.
Right.
That doesn't feel as good as alcohol and drugs. So I'm gonna eventually go back to alcohol and drugs.
Right.
But I get it, man. It's that tricky balance between like accepting imperfections but not living in complacency.
Oh yeah.
And like for me, that's one of like the critical aspects of emotional sobriety is learning to accept there's never going to be perfection, but not using that as an excuse. Like it's that shit we heard all the time in the beginning, you know, progress, not perfection.
Right.
It's like I find it almost 3 years clean. Like that's more vital than ever.
Oh yeah.
You know, accepting humility and sometimes humiliation for my mistakes, right? Like being able to accept grace, which is really fucking hard for me to do because like I'm the self-flagellator when it comes to my mistakes. I'd rather hold the whip and beat myself bloody so no one gets the chance to hit me. Feel like I'm in control somehow.
Right.
You know, and so like letting go of that, but at the same time, like not drifting into complacency, which is like what I did the past couple months.
Yeah.
Like I started to get distant from my spirituality, from my step work, from the stuff that worked for me. And I was like, fuck it, I'm never going to be perfect. Like I'm just going to go live like some of these other people I see and they're sober. I don't think they're the happiest. Right. I don't want to be happiest. I just want to like be lazy for a little while, which is not a judgment on them. That's just why I wanted it because a lot of those people are not lazy. Like what they do for them works. Right. I just wanted to be lazy and not have to do a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and so I sat on a fucking inventory for 5 weeks that I finally finished last night. You know?
Oh yeah. It's a weird dynamic of the complacency thing and then not beating yourself up for being perfect. You know, it's I mean. You know, a lot of times I look at like normie people around me and I'm like, dude, like the things that I like beat myself up over are like things that the average person doesn't even care or contemplate about. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't meditate enough today, or oh, I didn't hit enough meetings this week, or whatever. Like
sometimes other people in recovery, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes other people in recovery, like like there was someone I was talking to recently. They're like, yeah, like. I'm now just starting to pray and meditate in the mornings. And this person has like almost 4 years clean.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I'm like, how? You know, and their story is just different.
Right.
And that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I don't know, even over my almost 3 years of being sober, like it changes a lot. Like it changes like my spirituality and like the way I connect has changed, you know, and it changes all the time. Sometimes it's just like, sometimes it's just meetings. It's been church before. Sometimes it's music. Sometimes it's just like talking to my higher self, my higher power, you know. It's weird. It's always ever changing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking with a client about this last night, actually. Like, it has to change.
Right.
You know, we were talking about, you know, relationships with his family, like with his dad and with his girlfriend, with the rest of his family, too. And he was experiencing this pretty intense guilt. He was like, you know, I love him. It just feels different. And I was like, yeah, that's the upheaval. Like, all of us go through, normal people go through it too, at our age, you know, because he's 23, I'm 21. But also, you know, I was talking with him and I was like, well, if you were a different person when you were using, you get sober and you change completely, why would your relationships not change?
Oh, yeah.
I told him, like, you know, I loved my family before I got clean. But it was really selfishly. I loved them because I had to, because I was a kid and I was raised in it. I loved them because I needed to. I loved them out of the most selfish place of I don't want to feel like a bad son. And I think mixed in with all that was this genuine love that like I've now gotten into enlarge upon with my family. But I remember having like, you know, between 9 months and a year and a half clean, really being back and forth and like, do I really love my dad? Like, do I really truly love him? When I say that, do I mean it? Because I had said it for so long to get things or to just kind of sweep it under the rug or because that's the thing to say, right? And like recovery, you have to be honest in all capacities with yourself as best you can.
Yeah.
And like all that shit just changes.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it changes every aspect of your life, you know. Like there's like, you know, character defects that are different than they were in my addiction, you know.
Yeah.
There are also like characteristics like in positive ways that are way different, you know. Like there's things I realize that I do now, like saying it's simple shit, you know, like I don't know, I can be like pretty reliable on time type stuff, and I never was like that before, you know. I can wake up most mornings for anything, like if I need to, and it's just weird shit, you know. Like it's weird because like the person I imagined I would be at my age now when I was younger is vastly different than the person I am, you know. But I think my younger self would be a lot happier knowing who I am today, you know. It's weird.
Yeah. That's one of the most beautiful things recovery gave me is, you know, before the shit train that is addiction and everything with it, not just the substances, but the underlying issue, you know, that hole in your chest feeling. Like, recovery allowed me, this is the only way I could become the man like I hoped I would be when I was like 8.
Right.
You know, I was like, I want to be a good man one day. You know, I want to have honesty. I want to have integrity. I didn't really know what that meant at 8, but it was on a wall, and I was like, that's a good word.
Right.
You know, like those things that I thought would make a good man.
Yeah.
Good person. But, you know, I grew up like from a traditionalist background where it's like, you got to be a good man. Which means you got to have honor. You got to have integrity. You have to have a line in the sand that you stand behind and you hold to that limit. And you do not compromise your morals.
Right.
You know, and addiction stripped all that away. And so recovery is the process of actually being able to finally live up to all that.
Yeah.
Definitely imperfectly, but shit, at least there's opportunity to do it.
Right. And, you know, I feel like with you, I envy like you and your age group, because getting sober at your age is, I think, the perfect time to get sober. Like, you know, I'm 27, I'll be 28 in a few months, and like, woo woo, like
my knees creak when the rain comes in.
Yeah, for real. I've like recently over the last few months, especially this semester, like really have come to terms with my age and like where I'm at in life, and like it's kind of it's very humbling, you know. Like
looking at Roth IRAs yet?
Yeah. Well, dude, like I had like a class this semester, and the TA, like we were like the same age, you know what I mean? And she had to like explain to me about a paper I wrote that was like pretty bad, you know, and I like just did not have a grasp on like what a college paper should be, I guess, you know. It was very humbling, and I've had several experiences like that over the last few months. Like I've had a couple people on campus call me sir, and I'm like, dude,
that's
like,
uncomfortable.
It sucks. I'm like,
you know,
bro,
I'm in a rock band.
yeah, right. You know, I'm basically a man child. Like, you know, I just barely started paying bills on time like 2 years ago.
Sometimes
like,
I don't wear socks with shoes because I'm just too lazy.
A lot of times I don't wear pants when I do videos for Instagram or some shit. You know, I'm not wearing pants now. No, I'm just kidding.
I had to do a professional like presentation for a class, like record a video, and I literally was wearing basketball shorts and no socks or shoes, and I just put on a button up and sat on my floor with my laptop in front of me.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's so perfect. I feel like I wish life could just be like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I wish I just got in public wearing basketball shorts and a button up and no one asked questions.
Yeah. But I mean, so I don't know. Like I was saying, you know, it's I think you and like, you know, a few other people I know getting sober at 19, 18. Like I think that's awesome, and I think like, you know, compared to people your age, like you're gonna have you already have such a better grasp on life, and like, you know, it's weird. I'm coming to terms with my age now, but like I see all these people on campus that I'm like, dude, you don't even really know what you want, or like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's weird that people go straight into college at 18, like, and then try to figure out who they are, what they want, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did that. Like I went into college at 17 the first time.
Right.
Yeah, you know. I was business administration and management.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was on an Air Force ROTC scholarship.
I don't know.
And there are options for intended majors in order to keep the scholarship, where every single engineering major and then business administration and management. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to do engineering.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm doing business administration and management.
Right.
But yeah, I went to college at 17. I was already, you know, blackout drinking 4 or 5 nights a week.
Was that just because of where your birthday is, the cutoff or whatever?
Yeah, well, I skipped a grade, so I went from 6th to 8th grade, and so I graduated 2015, but I graduated at 17.
Oh shit!
And that played a big role too in just stuff like growing up. You know,
yeah,
that's where I learned how to be fake. Quite honestly.
Oh yeah.
I think I had learned a lot of aspects of being fake before then. You know, I'd learned how to gossip and lie, manipulate, and you know, if Tony told me he had a crush on Alexa, and I would tell someone else that he was in love with her, but so was his best friend, and, you know, find a way to make myself like the spider at the center of the web, because I was this weird fat white kid that just didn't feel like he fit in anywhere.
Right.
But if I had information, I was like the dope man for the gossip, and it was like, everyone come to me for the good.
Did you hear about Alicia?
And yeah, I skipped a grade. I had a bowl cut, fucking circle rim glasses. I only wore sweatpants and Keep Austin Weird t-shirts. Never lived in Austin. And like these, it's like Reebok dad sneakers.
Yeah.
You know, just part of me embracing the dad shoes again is like I've always worn dad shoes. That's just I grew up on dad shoes.
Yeah.
And I like skipped a grade, man, and it was so weird to be in the same middle school.
Yeah.
And skip a grade. And not know
Bye.
not know a goddamn soul in the new grade.
Oh yeah.
And like still run into the kids I grew up with, but now I'm like a little bit different.
Just flexing on them.
And there's these kids I hung out with that were witty and smart and like to talk shit on a lot of people. And I was like, all right, this is who I am now. You know, I'm just gonna be a sarcastic douchebag and get into like nihilism and Ayn Rand and objectivism and not understand half of it, but understand enough to talk smarter than people.
Right.
Dude, that carried me a long time.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, half understanding books to outsmart people in a 2-minute conversation carried me way longer than it had.
It still is.
To this day. To this day. The pretension is my castle.
All right. So what? I mean, I've never even asked you this or known why, but what made you end up here in Lubbock? I mean, because you know, you're from Colorado, went to treatment New Mexico. I mean, what was the move to get you here?
This is weird that you're asking.
Yeah.
This is like the 5th time I've talked about this over this past week. Like,
really?
This is the 5th time it's come up. And
Synchronicity.
So, I just thought of both Police songs. Synchronicity 2 is better than Synchronicity 1.
I'm not a huge Police guy. My bass player is a huge Police guy.
For you audio listeners, I dropped my head in shame.
I mean, my mom jammed them, and I know who they are, but I'm just not familiar with their whole discography.
In terms of like how I wound up in Lubbock, man, I was in treatment, and I was coming off a 3rd relapse. The treatment center only thought it was my 2nd.
Right.
They still only
you relapsed in treatment 3
times.
Wow.
Yeah, my 2nd day, like 28 days in, and then 40 days in. No, more than that. No, it was like...
And they didn't kick you out?
No, I don't... That's... Yeah, I look back on that, and I call that God, because I should have been out of there, man.
Yeah.
Like, I watched guys get high and get bounced out.
Right.
You know, like the second night I was there, or the first night I was there's these guys up in one of the houses smoking heroin off foil. And they had made hooch as a going-away party present for 2 of the guys.
Fuck.
Yeah, for 2 of the guys, Preston and Pops, who are both dead now. They died a couple weeks after they left treatment.
R.I.P.
They went back up to Wisconsin. It's okay to laugh, man. It's a fucking ridiculous idea to make hooch to leave treatment.
I'm not laughing at their death. I'm just like, that's funny to me to make hooch in treatment.
What was fucked up is, like, I heard about their death. They told us, right? And I still got high.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, dude, they're fucking dead. Like, this shit's real. I'm going to go steal some extract from a church kitchen. You know, like, that's how the disease is like,
oh, dude.
Someone could, you know what I mean? Someone could just point of, like, what was it, that fucking video Pleasure Unwoven? Was like of a normal person.
Oh, yeah, I had to watch that.
Like, if you point a gun at a normal person, if someone has a bottle of beer in their hand, a normal person, you point a gun at them and say, I'll shoot you if you drink it, they set it down. Right?
Yeah,
but if you point a gun at an alcoholic, he asks you if it's loaded.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's just so quintessentially fucking true.
Oh, dude, addicts die next to other addicts all day, and like it doesn't affect them. You know what I mean?
He had a lower tolerance.
Yeah, they're just fucking rummage their pockets and steal the rest of their shit.
Dude, he's an idiot.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
There's always that. There's always another fucking. Dude, I was like, for me, that's one of the symptoms of addiction is just like quick answers. To everything.
All right. What did you relapse on in treatment?
Well, the second day was hooch, which was funny because the first day I showed up, I was like, I'm gonna get the sobriety thing down. I'm gonna do all my groups. I'm gonna win at therapy. Don't know why I thought that. I'm not. I
want to show that therapist who's really good.
I'm not joking. I was like, yeah. I was like, I am going to do so good at this that I will stay sober as long as I want to be sober.
Just stay sober out of spite.
Yeah. So I got drunk my second day.
Of course.
You know, and shaved my head in the mirror with a Britney Spears moment. I had this pretentious saying when people asked me in the treatment center why I shaved my head, and I was like, oh, fucking shit, dude. I would tell them in the most serious of tones, when Saul became Paul, his vanity was the first to fall. And I don't know why no one punched me in the mouth. The second time was on some extract that I stole from a church. It was there was a meeting in a church and they had like a kitchen. And I just stole all the extract.
I'm going to the bathroom. And
yeah,
then the kitchen rummaging.
Yeah, I'm just like, it was great because the meeting was there was a candlelight meeting, which for some reason is always quieter.
Oh, yeah.
Just naturally subdued.
All right.
In this room, and there's a doorway, and then there's the kitchen, right? And like the cabinets I'm rummaging through are on the wall with the meeting.
Right.
And so I'm trying to silently rummage through glass bottles. And I wind up getting like 1.5 ounces of extract total. Like not enough at all. And it was all like almond extract and orange extract, which is anywhere between 90 and 98% alcohol.
Really?
It just fucking hurts.
You just chug it? Chug the whole thing?
You chug it, and then your throat burns, and you feel like a cat with a hairball, and you're just like, like that, just trying to fight back the throat.
Fuck, man.
I just got a little tipsy.
See, like, you may have never put a needle in your arm, but, like, there's no question about it. You're a drug addict.
Dude,
like...
yeah, I signed a blood oath for heroin when I was in treatment, knowing there was no heroin. I was with these two guys in the house, and they were like, yeah, dude, we got heroin in here. And, like, I was 99% sure they did. And I was like, they're just fucking with me. He was like, I'm soft, and they think they're hard. And, like, I mean, they were harder than me for sure. And they're just fucking with me. But that 1% of me, the junkie of me, was just like, I'm like, a blood oath for heroin's a pretty good deal. You know, like, I got a lot of blood, and I don't have a lot of heroin, and I've never done heroin. And I had this logic where I was like, I'm already in treatment.
Did you, like, cut your hand and shake each other? Or like,
dude, no, I pricked my, they wrote it out, and I pricked my finger with a thumbtack and signed it in blood. And our morning group, the next morning, they gave it to the clinical director.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I just thought it was a joke. But I had this fucked up logic where I was like, what better place to do heroin for the first time than in treatment?
That's the name of the episode, Travis and the Heroin Blood Oath.
There you go.
That's great.
Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point.
That's so funny. Yeah. That was the second one?
And then the third time was a bunch of NyQuil.
Fuck.
NyQuil. Like, we went up to Red River to go snowshoeing.
What's snowshoeing?
Snowshoeing is a miserable experience.
Oh, yeah.
Snowshoeing, you know, you'll see them in like ski lodges and shit. It's
like
those,
a tennis racket things?
Yeah, tennis racket, like wicker shoes, right?
Right.
And we go snowshoeing, and like, I guess it's fun, but it's not fun for a bunch of out of shape drug addicts and alcoholics that have been eating a lot of food and smoking 1 to 2 packs a day.
All right.
And we're just hiking through the mountains. And snowshoeing's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like 3 times the energy for every step because you're pushing and you go into the snow a little bit and you have to pull it back. It's like, just imagine constantly walking in gum.
Yeah.
With giant feet. If you had like
it's
fake
so
bare feet, always in gum. And this is a fun recreational activity that people do. And I remember I got so fed up with it, I was like, I'm just going to get fucking high. I hate this.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like, I didn't plan on getting high. At that point, I had been chairing meetings while I was in treatment. Like praying to this higher power every night. I was trying to be more serious about therapy. I was participating in groups, but I wasn't working any type of step at all, whatsoever. And we were out there, and I was just like, fuck this. Like, the thought came into my head about getting high. We stopped at this, like, grocery store to buy, like, Gatorades and stuff because everyone was dying.
Yeah.
You know, we were all dehydrated. And I feel, to this day, I feel bad for our techs. There's 2 of them. And there was not that many of us. There's probably only about 8 of us, which since I've worked in inpatient is not a fun ratio, but it's workable. A 4-to-1 ratio is workable in public with clients, right? But as soon as we get into this grocery store, without any communication between us as clients, everyone just disperses.
Yeah.
You know, and like it basically looked like a CVS where it's like aisle after aisle after aisle, like, or we're like one of those like neighborhood Walmarts, like about that size, right? Right. And we just everywhere. And one tech's up at the register trying to pay for everything because we were smart and waited. We were smart and waited till one of them was tied up.
Right.
And this other tech, Jacob, had to chase all of us and prioritize which ones to chase.
All right.
And I got so lucky, that he chased the guys that ran to the liquor aisle, right? Whereas I was like, I'll be the smart cookie here, and I'll go over to the cough syrup.
Yeah.
And I stole this bottle of like kids NyQuil cough syrup, and me and this kid Nick split it 50-50. And you know, within 30 minutes it was gone. And we're sitting in the van, and I finish it, and I'm not joking, Dan. Like within a minute of finishing, I look at him and I was like, "That's not enough." Yeah. We stop at a gas station to get cigarettes, and we're standing in line, and I have this big puffy jacket on. And there's like the little gel capsules of NyQuil, you know, in like the little boxes where it's like 4 per box.
All right.
There's like 8 per box. I forget how many. It's like 4 to 8 per box, right?
Right.
There's 10 of them. I'm looking at it and I'm talking with Nick, like whispering, like, how many should we take? He's like, I don't know, man. How many do you think we should take? And I was just like, all of them. And so all 10. And he like does this stupid thing where he gets between me and like the person at the cash register, thinking they would somehow not just see like this 320-pound kid desperately shoveling boxes into a jacket. And somehow they didn't.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, and I just got really, really high and robo-tripped and forgot that I had to, and I forgot that I had my fucking, my family call.
Yeah.
So I was on the phone with my parents, you know, just like, yeah, my steps are going really good. Sobriety feels good. I enjoy this a lot. Thank you for treatment. This is going well. And I must have said that 3 or 4 times because I was just high trying to make sense. And I got honest after the first one and the third one. And the third one was January 15th, 2017. And I count my clean date from alcohol and drugs as January 16th. Because the first day didn't get high.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't had to get drunk or high since then. I've come close a handful of times in recovery to getting drunk or high. Probably about 7 or 8 times I've come close. Either because it was there or I just got so dry and bitter that the obsession hit and it was like, I'm going to go find something.
Yeah.
And every time it was a phone call or prayer and meditation or both. I almost got high before one of your shows once.
Really? So, I mean, you're a month away from 3 years, and I've known you for a long time, and I've seen you go through quite a bit of things, you know, but what would you point to as being like the hardest thing that you've gone through thus far in your recovery? I mean, I don't know. For me, it was, you know, last summer I went through a breakup.
Oh.
I got fired from a job for the first time in my life, you know, and like, it was just terrible, you know, and the fact that I had like survived it was really only because I, you know, I started going back to meetings. I got a new sponsor, but I mean, what's been the hardest thing that you've had to go through in your recovery?
It's hard to pin down one, you know, because they get hard for different reasons.
Right.
You know, at one point when I was at the door, I sat on a 4th step for 2 weeks. I've been fired by my sponsor for half-assing it, and I just didn't look for a new one. I was sitting on inventory, and I came really, really close to drinking my roommate's alcoholic mouthwash, who ironically was the sponsor that had just fired me and was also my roommate and also had mouthwash with alcohol in it. I came really close to drinking that in a bottle of window cleaner, and it was like John and Bravo and Jason. You know, I texted them, hey, can you guys like talk for a second? And they were all over there within 2 minutes.
Right.
And yeah, Jason held me like a baby. Like, well, I cried with all that shit that was in my head. So that was definitely one of those moments. Man, I'd have to say the hardest one because it took so long and there was so much growth that had to come out of it over such a long period of time. I went through a breakup, my first sober love breakup back in July. And it was a really codependent relationship. It had gotten really unhealthy. For both of us. We're both really good people. Like, my ex-girlfriend and I are both really good people.
Right.
And it just weren't right. And it was one of those early recovery relationships where it was never meant to work out. And it's either one of the ones you get high over or you learn from.
Right.
You know, and for me, it was tough because it wasn't just the breakup and how much that sucked and how much that hurt. And the first time I actually had to be sober and deal with all of that, it was... My parents also weren't talking to me at the time because their marriage was falling apart, and they were trying to save it and work on it. So neither of them were there for me. And my sister, as much as she wanted to be, was also dealing with her own stuff. And so for the first time in my life, the people that I'd always looked to for validation, to make me feel good, to tell me who I was as a person, basically the people that I would be good to prove to myself that I was a good person instead of a piece of shit doing good things to forget he's a piece of shit, like they weren't there.
Right.
You know, and I remember sitting in my friend, Will Johnson, I was sitting in his truck and I was like, I want to fucking kill myself. You know, because like here I am, you know, over 2.5 years sober, and like I'm still using other people to try to feel okay. Like I've 2.5 years clean, but I've still been running. You know, 2.5 years clean. How many guys sponsored? How many 5th steps? And how many meetings? And how many speaker meetings? And conferences? And college? And it hit me that I'd still just been running.
Right.
You know, that I'd still just been scared of being who I was and doing, you know, and for me, like getting sober, I talked about it with my sponsor recently. Like I got sober and I thought I had to be someone else because who I was clearly did not work. The way that I approached life, who I was, what I thought, what I did, served only to get me drunk and high and burn myself and other people down. And so this idea got planted in my head, not by the 12 steps, not by meetings, not by anyone. I think just really by my own fear that in order for me to have a life, I had to be someone else. And like for me, the 12 steps was the way to just magically not be myself anymore.
Right.
And like what I found over 2 years of struggles of like getting fired from jobs sober, being homeless sober, having an engine blow up in a car sober, not like physically explode, but like the top half blow out.
Fuck.
Filled with
I remember that.
smoke.
You bought somebody's old
Bought
car.
Ross's car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I had to sit on the phone with poison control because I had breathed coolant fumes. While my boss at Mattress Firm was like, you're fine. You can stay for the rest of your shift. And I turned to him and I went, I'm not going to die for Mattress Firm. He just went,
Yeah.
Over the summer, that breakup, because...
And I mean, would you say that was your first, like, real, you know, like, time really feeling like you were in love, being in love? I mean, was that...
I had been in love once before.
As an adult, I guess I should say.
As an adult, yeah. I had been in love before when I was 16. And that was by far way more unhealthy and codependent.
Right, right. Oh, yeah.
Shotgun in my mouth in the bathtub level. You know, just like that kind of shit. And I was also drinking back then. But
right.
This one, yeah, you know, it wasn't just that I was sober and I had to feel it. And it wasn't just that I was more than sober but in recovery, which means I had to do the work on myself. It was that I'd gotten sober, Dan, and like I'd built all these little doll houses in my mind. All these little avenues and paths of life that at some point I was going to like use God and the rooms and people to just build this life that was so good that if I lived it, I would have to be a good person to deserve it.
Right.
Because I was terrified of doing the introspective work to actually, that deep, just dark, muddy work, to start genuinely believing in a daily personal way that I'm a good person. That felt much scarier and much more, for a long time, impossible than just acting and building a good enough life to feel like a good person, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're saying. That's kind of like, instead of like really feeling and being a person in recovery, like you kind of felt like imposter syndrome, where you just had been playing a role and just going through the motions, doing all the things, but internally not feeling every result of all these actions that you're performing, you know, like which I feel like, you know, early on, like to do that is good. You know, but like eventually, like at some point, you gotta really feel all that internally. You know,
you gotta get
like,
the drugs and alcohol out of the way so you can start to feel it later.
Right.
And then comes the task of feeling without running back.
Yeah.
But like I'm grateful. It took me months, but you know, I think today and fairly recently, I guess over the past like 6 weeks. I actually became grateful that she dumped me.
Right.
It was humiliating and embarrassing, and it was painful, right? But if she hadn't done that and I just kept fucking building dollhouses, I don't know if I'd be sober right now.
Right.
You know, and that's how I lived before I ever started using.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be an army man. I want to be a good man. It was still just like build a little dollhouse life for Travis, and just force myself to fit into it. And if I fit, then I'm good. You know, always looking for the external things to prove that I'm worth something. So I was terrified of who I was when it was like 3 a.m. and just me and the ceiling fan talking. And I was like, I don't fucking know. You know, and like with that breakup, like it didn't just break down that delusion that I had that I could just fix myself basically through other people. Like by fixing, like quote unquote, fixing them so I don't have to look at the shit that I'm doing, being controlling and manipulative and dishonest. And just overall delusional and playing God in my own life and other people's lives, right? But I remember doing inventory with Kip, and that's where I get the phrase dollhouse from. He was like, oh, nice, Travis. You built this little dollhouse life and tried to force her into it like she's not even a fucking human being. And I was like, Jesus Christ. You are so right in the most painful, helpful way.
Oh, yeah.
But that led to this beautiful realization that sucked and why I got complacent and lazy, because there was a lot to look at.
Right.
I had done that with so many other things.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and when she dumped me, as much as it sucked, that first one broke down. That first dollhouse broke down.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I saw that I couldn't keep doing that. And what happened after 2-3 months of doing work to process that and a backslide of getting coffee and some whole mess there, and I finally learned the fucking lesson that I needed to learn, right? Then it was turning and realizing, like looking out on this like visual field of my life, and there was a lot more dollhouses.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things that I built up. And I couldn't keep living in those.
Yeah.
They just weren't going to, because if that first one didn't work, why would those? You know, and that's like the work that I've been in lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to take the rest of my life.
Right. I get that. And it's, I can relate to that because I feel like all my life I have like, and I still do it some, but like I reflect off of the people around me. You know what I mean? Like I kind of chameleon to the situation I'm in socially or whatever, you know. And it's not necessarily like a negative trait or a defect of character, but
it's really helpful for addiction.
Yeah, it's very helpful for
absolutely.
addiction, you know, like it. I've never done coke before. Like, I fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Like,
into sober living, it's like, yeah, I've done fucked up shit too.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
one of the bad boys.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I feel like, what led me into drugs and stuff was that kind of me having that personality type and admiring like, you know, people who are already like on that path, you know, in similar ways, like admiring the fact that like their personality is like allowed them to, you know, get girls' attention or whatever, you know what I mean? So like I kind of chameleon to be like them, you know what I mean? And it's so I can relate, you know, it's like,
well, it's like, it's not just chameleoning because like I knew that. Like,
right. I know what you're saying. I mean, that's
like
just my relation to what you're saying.
Yeah, no,
but,
I'm sorry. Because like for a while I got hung up on that. I was like, well, if I'm just my authentic self all the time, then I don't got to worry about chameleoning.
Right.
Which sounds really nice in principle. In reality, I was just way more of a sarcastic asshole and went, call your sponsor about it if you don't like it.
Right.
You know, making it other people's problem. And for me, like, it went deeper because it wasn't just that I was reflecting and other people were reflecting off. Because other people are always going to influence who you are as a person, who you are as a person. Like, they're always going to contribute. There's no question about that. Like, if I'm going to include people in my life in a meaningful way, it's because they are going to contribute things to it. And when they leave, they will take things with them. That's what being a fucking human being is.
Right.
In like my experience, you know. But it was like this deeper question, almost like metaphysical, because I overthink, right? Like the amount that I overthink out loud with other people, I also do in my own head, and that's just how I've always been. Am I just mirroring other people, or am I just living as an actual mirror? Because there's a difference between just reflecting other people's actions and behaviors and trying to fit in and be cool, and this genuine core belief that you are nothing but that.
Right.
You know, there's a difference between not really liking who I am and kind of just trying to fit in by modeling other people. There's that. And I did that too. But for me, it was deeper underneath was, no, that's all I am.
Right.
You know, and if I strip that away, then there's nothing. You know, and like a good analogy would be the key difference would be looking at yourself in the mirror sober for longer than 2 minutes, which is hard. I don't like doing it. I didn't do it today.
Yeah. This person I listened to
4 hours of sleep and like jerked off to porn twice. I don't want to look in the fucking mirror right now.
Recently, this person I listened to, like, they were talking about they're not an addict, but they went to a wellness center, and their therapist told them that they need to like tell themselves tell yourself you love yourself in the mirror every morning. And he was like, dude, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Like it feels so weird and wrong, but it's like, you know, and that's something maybe I need to work on too. And I feel like you and I both have struggled with like self-image, self-worth. Like it's my biggest fucking thing. And I'm, you know, knowing you, I've known that it's something you struggle with too. And I think it's like, it's weird because it's like, it's super unhealthy a lot of the time, most of the time, but it also is a good aspect because it can push you to work harder and be better and become better. You know what I mean? And
I mean, that's the danger of like all character defects is they're not entirely bad.
Yeah.
Like they work.
Yeah.
Like, the most dangerous thing about my character defects is when they work. Like the worst thing I can be is right.
Yeah.
Because then I think magically that I'm just going to be right all the time.
Right.
And like the worst aspect about dishonesty is it passes sometimes. And the worst thing about being selfish is sometimes other people let it slide. Or even worse, it gets me what I want.
Yeah.
Right? Like the dangerous thing for me about character defects is not that they're inherently bad. That's fucking easy to get.
Right.
And I sit there and I look at that column, I'm like, holy shit. Like I'm self-righteous, I'm a poser, I'm fake, I'm a homewrecker. Like I shouldn't be those things. The problem is that they work sometimes.
Right.
And you can be sober and they can still work in narrow circumstances. And like for me, that has fucked me up for a while. Learning to let go of things, even though they still work occasionally when I really want them to, and like that guilt and shame I've struggled with for a while. And it's a guy in the room's Greg, who's helped me out with that a lot. And he pointed out to me, in the 12-step fellowship that you and I both work, where it talks about a specific step. And part of the wording that step says, take away these things that are objectionable. Right? And he's like, well, how do you think you find it objectionable? And he's like, you do it and you feel shitty. When you did it in addiction, you didn't care because you didn't find it objectionable.
Right.
It wasn't something to give up. It was a necessity. It was a tool. It was a benefit. And when I do them sober, it feels objectionable. I get that, what you talked about, just that like internal reaction. It's almost like, for me, really weird, but like, those like random lollipop flavors? Yeah. I fucking hate banana flavored anything. It's garbage to
me,
the
little
right?
dum-dums with the random mystery.
The reaction is almost like opening that and just putting it in my mouth, and I go, this is fucking banana, But that's how I am with character defects when I act out on them. And certain ones, I just like, this morning I had to make amends to Dom.
Yeah.
And I was just like a selfish dick, just in conversation. And as soon as I did, I was like, why? Why am I doing this?
All right.
Like that type of reaction.
For anybody listening, Dom is Travis's roommate.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff, and it's like, you're a pretty deep person. I feel like the majority of our conversations are similar to this one, and
we don't really ever talk about the weather.
No, and I love that. And I remember telling my therapist like early on in IOP, like the less I talk about the weather and the more I talk about God and deep things, like the better off I am spiritually. Yeah. And like, I don't know, I feel like it's hard to in recovery, like especially in 12-step, like, and that's always been my struggle with going like continually on a regular basis going to meetings, is like, I know that, now I know that like, yeah, you're going to hear the same shit most of the time, and we're supposed to go to like, so if we share, and if we share the same shit we've shared 100 times, like the person who's never heard it hears it, Yeah. But it's hard, I mean,
like, my perspective with that is like, I'm grateful it's always the same shit.
Right.
Because like, I'm crazy, dude. Like,
no,
I've
yeah, and that's one of the best things about it too. Just like we were saying about character defects, the positive and
negative I'm not trying to like preach or push, but like, I just go insane. Like, I get into these like delusional places where I just think I have things figured out.
Right.
And I'll start to change all these things in my mind. I'll start to skew perspectives. I'll start to believe I'm in control, or it's someone else's fault, or a couple times in recovery, I've gotten dry enough to be like, am I really an addict or alcoholic? What I've been struggling with lately, am I really a sex addict? Because part of my recovery is also recovering from sex addiction.
Right.
Well, I'll be completely honest. I've been doing jack shit about that.
Right.
The past like 2 weeks. And like that delusion will come up. And there's just something nice about showing up to a room. And even though my life has changed drastically since the first time I heard that stuff, it's like this anchor. Because I'll change so much, and I'll become, in a sense, like kind of like unpinned.
Right.
And I'll feel like I'm kind of floating and lost. And I'll just show up to a room and sit down, and someone who doesn't know what's going on with me will share the same thing they've shared time and again. And it'll hit me in the situation that I'm in and remind me of like this rock solid foundation. With all these things shifting and changing, that's fine. It's almost like a boat, with a lead tied to the dock.
Right.
You can float anywhere. But if it gets too far, you pull it back in. Right?
Yeah.
The danger when I lose that is then I just float aimlessly and I don't know how to get back.
Yeah. And
like, I've been there a couple times, and it can be really scary, especially in early recovery. I felt like it was a lot more okay to be lost. Where it got harder, and I've talked to other people, like you and other guys and gals with time, it becomes a lot harder to admit when you're lost.
Yeah.
After like,
because you're supposed to be this pillar of recovery and like, a solid person mentally and spiritually, and it's like, dude, like shit still happens. And like all of the things that we were in our addiction can still come out, in other ways or the same ways, It's, yeah.
It be a lot of pressure, and it's difficult because the first person that always puts me on a pedestal is me.
Right.
Like the first one every time, I'll get into fear about, do people look up to me this way? Do they rely on me this way? Like I can't let them down because then they'll reject me, and then I'll be alone, and like I'll be shitty and scared and alone again. And I remember what it was like to be alone and scared in my parents' basement. I don't want to be that ever again. It's like that hornet's nest of thinking will build up. And
right.
And that's consistently what I've seen with guys and people I know that have gone out after a couple of years. Is like they stop talking about that kind of stuff. They show up to the meetings, which is good, and they share about what it was like when they first got sober.
Yeah.
But they don't share about what's been going on. And I don't know about you, but like I'm not very emotionally sober most of the time.
No,
you know,
it's something.
There's a lot more growth that has to happen. Like I have to share about that shit in meetings.
Right.
I just do, because A, it helps the newcomer because it's like, oh, I can still be honest at 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't have to be perfect. And then B, I don't know, man. It's just showing up and doing what I did when I first showed up, which is like, I have no fucking clue how to live.
Right. The last few meetings I went to, I was like, okay, I got to get back to going to meetings on a regular basis, and like every time I've gone, I didn't hear anything from people who have the same amount of time for me that I was like, oh, that's great. But the people who had a few days, a couple times, like almost every meeting that I've been to since I started going back a few months ago, like I've heard like somebody who was just like desperate and broken, and I was immediately reminded like, oh, that was me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like,
yeah.
And
then there's like the even more humbling reminders, which is the people with like 3 months clean that are on fire. And I'm like,
yeah.
Fuck.
I've got 7 sponsees. I'm like, I don't have any.
Or I have a couple sponsees, and they're like, yeah, I'm just like peaceful and happy with God. I'm excited about it. I'm like, I've been treating this like online homework assignments where you show up and do it and go, oh, it's submitted to the discussion board of God.
You just randomly have a discussion post due tomorrow. Last one. Hey.
Yeah, you brought up like changing relationships with God. That's something I actually just wanted to talk to you about, like one-on-one as a person.
Yeah.
Like tell me about that.
Oh, I mean, it's weird, man. Like, my you've met my dad, and like love my dad to death, and I know I'd be dead without him. He paid for me to go to treatment, and he's a great man, and his spirituality is deep, and it's trippy, bro. Like there'd be times where I'm like loading a needle, and he calls me, he goes, what are you doing right now? I'm like,
what?
Nothing. And he's like, I just feel God is telling me that you're up to no good, and like I should be worried about you. And I'm like, have a loaded syringe. I'm like, nothing is going on. Like I'm just at the house hanging out, like about to poke myself, Like his spirituality is deep, bro. Like it's freaky.
Yeah.
Like he'll have dreams about like stuff I'm doing and then tell me it, and it's like that was what I was doing. Like it's spooky. Like he's called me late at night before when I'm up to no fucking good, and he knows. But at the same time, like my dad is a pretty strict person, like with his faith, and like I've gone into my childhood before, and my story on the podcast, but like I had a good childhood, but like I was brought up with like this criticism of like, I have to be a certain way. I have to have a certain faith. I have to have a certain type of relationship with God and a certain belief system. And man, I struggle with it all. I still do, almost 3 years sober. I struggle with like theology and like, and I'm so curious about other paths of faith. And like, for like the first year of my sobriety, I was like, doing what my dad did spiritually, what I was brought up to do, and like, yes, I felt good most of the time, and yes, it was keeping me sober and it was helping me. But like after a year of it, I got to the point where it was like, I'm doing stuff that normal people do, that the average person does, like masturbate or, have sexual relationships. I'm 25 then. Like stuff that normal 25-year-olds across the planet are doing. And I'm fucking hating myself for it. Even though I have a good job, I'm in sober living. I'm like, a pretty good client of the sober living. Like I'm trustworthy. I'm doing well. And I fucking hate myself, and like it was this like tug and pull I'm having with my inner demon, of like trying to going to church on Sunday and then, fucking somebody Saturday night or whatever, I'm like, it just got to the point where I really had to ask myself, like, and it wasn't even like all of it was me. All of it was in my head. It wasn't like God was making me feel bad about myself. It was like, what kind of Christian am I? Am I? What kind of example am I setting if I'm doing this?
Why the fuck am I praying when I'm doing all this janky shit? Like,
yes.
How fucking selfish
well, it's not even
am I?
just
I'm
like
not even grateful with this shit.
It wasn't even like my prayer or worship or meditation. It was all about my like position in the church, being on the praise team. Like if somebody's like, is somebody gonna come see my band? Play in a bar Saturday night and then me play in church Sunday morning and judge me, and I'm worrying about all this kind of stuff, and I finally had to like sit down and like really like, I had heard it so much in AA and from other people, like a God of our own understanding, like people have to get to this point in the rooms where they model their higher power kind of how they want, but how they feel,
Yeah.
And for a long time, and it's still this way, I've like kind of depicted my understanding of God as music, like you can in music, you can either be in harmony with a note or in dissonance.
It's interesting too, because like being in harmony is an experience. Like you have knowledge of how to be in harmony, right? Like how to actually, like music theory, match notes. Right. If it's a G note, you know how to play that on a guitar and be in harmony with another instrument playing the G note.
Right.
But you only know when you're in it when you experience it.
Right. Exactly. And so like I came to this conclusion, like I'm just going to live my life the best I know to be harmonious with God and nature and the universe. Like some days I'll be dissonant. Some days I'll have dissonant feelings within myself, but like that's okay. That's all part of music, like that's what makes life and energy and music all beautiful, and so
Life's just one big jam band.
Yeah,
baby.
man. I mean,
there's a rock and roll heaven. I'm sure they got a hell of a band.
But it's just my personal depiction of it. That's the way I can understand it, and it sounds kind of woo new agey, and like I have a lot of like different beliefs that I take from different faiths, when I meditate, I like do, guided meditations or like things I've heard from different people, I don't know. I feel I've come to this place now where I really believe and like feel and not just think it or say it, but I feel like God is bigger than religion. Like God puts all these religions on earth and all these people with different pathways all to him. Like, Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad might all be right. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, who am I to know or to try to understand like the vast,
everything
concept that God is, which is everything, which is you and I, which is every fucking little thing around us, this desk, like the fucking air, like it's
atoms.
all God. It's all part of God and the universe. And like, if you really think about it, like harmony and dissonance, like everything then can lead to those two things, So that's just, I don't know. It's weird. I mean,
I like that idea, that kind of contrast between harmony and dissonance, like the two planes to be on, right? Because it's like, being in recovery and someone tells you to get honest when you want to lie, you're like not really sure. You're like, okay, can't say no in this program, right? And you get honest and just something like clicks inside. Like the word I've used for like 3 years, and this is kind of trippy too, is harmony.
Yeah.
Like something just lines up. Something I am not aware of because I wanted to lie.
Right.
And I tell the truth because someone else tells me to, and something lines up. And like it feels exactly like harmony. Something is now in line where before it was not.
Right.
And like that's that feeling that I've heard a lot of people talk about. A guy in a meeting last night shared, his conception of a higher power is like this calm but running river. And when he's going with the flow, he just lays on his back in the river and he floats. But if he gets up and he walks against it, it's pretty fucking hard to push against. He's like, so I just look for when I feel like I'm pushing against life. And a woman who's there also shared the same thing. Like that conception again of just like, of this peace, serenity, harmony versus dissonance and conflict and contradiction. And like, that definitely comes from the Eastern philosophies of like, yin and yang for sure.
Right.
But you also see a lot of that in like the Christian theology, right? Mm-hmm. Like, in the Christian theology, when people act in accordance with Christ, they feel joy, not just happiness, but this idea of this internal alignment with God, of this joy, right? And when they don't, like for example, when Moses comes down from the mountain and they're worshiping the false idol, and they still keep doing it, but some of them are like, oh shit, like we shouldn't have been doing that. That's that feeling of like unalignment or disalignment,
right?
Or disharmony, is that
dissonance. I mean,
dissonance?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, but yeah. I mean, like the positive and negative, God and the devil. I mean, it's really, and what's like even if you think about it in Christian terms, like God and the devil are the two opposites, but like God made the devil. Like it's all still him. Like
that's still trippy to me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
That's still trippy to me.
I saw a meme on Reddit the other day that was like, so let me get this straight. God loves you so much that he created the devil, and I'm fucking it up, but he was like, but the devil, if you listen to him, punishes you forever. And like, it's like, it's a weird, I mean, like
angsty atheist means,
oh, for sure. And I have atheist friends. We have atheist friends, you know, and like
shit, we have atheist friends in recovery.
Yeah, and
There's
like
one
honestly,
guy's been sober 30 years and he's an atheist, a fucking militant atheist.
Yeah, I'm gonna have him on eventually, Terry Don.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I really want to hear all his shit.
Yeah, just sit there quietly for an hour and listen to him talk about like the 9 different lives he's lived when he was deployed in the Pacific.
Yeah, prison or all kinds of stuff. Yeah, he's gonna come on soon.
Fucking haberdasher in Europe. I don't know, man.
Yeah, but you know, I take from everything I can. Like you know, I was listening to Richard Dawkins the other day. Like I try to take from everything I can because I feel like if I really truly believe in God and believe that He like created everything or all creation comes from Him, that means that like atheists and Buddhists and Muslims and every conception of God and every conception of like enlightenment came from, you know, creation itself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. A lot of my
why would an infinite God take finite forms?
Right, exactly.
That's the place that I wound up coming to, and like that may change for me in the future. But yeah, like I get that. You know, if this thing is everything, why choose one form?
Right.
You know, I think, you know, for me, there's not only just the theological and philosophical difficulty of what this conception truly looks like. Does it matter what it looks like?
Right.
Right. Does it matter that I know the road ahead more than the fact I'm walking on it?
Right.
Right. Does it matter that I know the destination more than the fact I am moving?
Right.
Right, and for me too, like the struggle too is, I don't know why, but I guess I've always viewed growing and living as 2 different things. Like I always have to put one on pause while I'm doing the other. You know what I mean? You know, jump into the work, do a bunch of work, find all this growth, and just like be super involved in the program, but the other things in life kind of suffer. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna do other things in life, like work out and get in a romantic relationship and have awesome sex and like get into hobbies and like watch The Mandalorian, which is dope. It's not a plug, but it's dope. You should watch it. I'm not paying. Hey, Disney. No, I've said fuck way too many times on this for Disney to ever sponsor me. I said, I huff gasoline, Disney Plus, please sponsor me. You know, and always like that dichotomy of like flipping between one or the other. And it's almost like a hamburger patty where I'm just like getting burned on one side and feeling raw on the other, so I like flip, you know?
Yeah.
I like get burned out with like the steps and work, so I just like flip to being lazy and doing my own thing with life, like, which is enjoyable at first. That starts to burn me out. My program feels kind of raw and not attended to, so then I flip back again.
Right.
You know, like flip flopping and you know, I don't know. Like I think something that I need to pursue personally that I have not been is viewing those things as the same. Yeah. You know, a lot of times I've always really compartmentalized growth and introspection and work, you know, with the steps, with God, with other people. I've really compartmentalized that away from life. And when I've had my most beautiful moments is when there's no fucking separation between the two. Right. And they just flow seamlessly like a wicker basket. You know, it's just like weaving in and out of each other. Even better analogy, like mixed thread, where it's like they're the same cord. Like 2 different threads in the same cord, the same real material, right? But it's funny, dude. That's like feels like a consistent theme of our talk today is like this black and white dichotomy of, you know, like God and the devil, like step work and life and being in recovery and being dry and like, you know, being sober, playing at the bar, and it's like very much like back and forth,
right?
Like, I think for me, a lot of that came from addiction, you know, like...
Right. Oh, high highs and low lows, for sure.
Yeah, you know, like the roller coaster for sure, the high highs and the low lows, but also everything in life seemed, for as gray and ambiguous as a lot of things were in active addiction, I did rely on a lot of black and white.
Oh, yeah.
I was either the victim, like I was the victim. Like the world was wrong and I was right, or I was wrong, but it was also the world's fault. Like it was very much one or the other. And then I got sober and like that was really helpful, right? Travis, you are either lying or you're telling the truth. Stop saying that, well, I just think I'm being considerate with what I'm saying. Fuck you. Like, you're lying or you're telling the truth. Oh, yeah. And people told me that. I was like, okay. You know? I was like, I'm not really being selfish with this girl because I do like her. And it's like, doesn't mean you're not selfish.
Right.
You know? And, like, that black and white was helpful. It still is. But it's come up in my life a lot the past couple months, this, like, reoccurring phrase, like, God is in the gray. Yeah. You know, if it's an infinite God, why are there only 2 options? And, like, something I've been called out for is using the phrase, I see this going one of 2 ways. And I had a spiritual advisor go, I don't fucking care how you see it going. You're not God. And oh, yeah. I am not.
Yeah. I don't know. It's yeah. That's a lot to process, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. I forgot what I was gonna say, but now I remember. So, like, if you said a while ago that you're kind of curious about the Christian faith and stuff. Like, one thing that I really appreciate about my time spent pursuing Christianity in like a deep way was like, I tapped into a way to really like have a spiritual experience through worship, and for a long time I thought like this is the only way I can have a spiritual experience, but AA taught me that I can have a spiritual experience in a lot of different ways, like I remember my first fourth step, and my sponsor, who told me, I remember I had plans that night to go do something, and he was like, okay, here's your character defects. I want you to meditate on these, pray to God, ask him to help you to remove them. And, all my life I had like grown up in church and had spiritual experiences during worship and stuff, and with my dad at home playing his guitar and having spiritual experiences doing worship, like. But that night I had like a really deep spiritual experience where I felt the presence of God, like in a deep, meaningful way. And it was just me, and it was just meditating over my character defects and feeling, like feeling that the truth in those things, like in who I had been in my addiction and those defects that I have, they're my fourth step, And so that really changed in a big way, like my understanding of like what a spiritual experience is and like how tangible it can be, and now I kind of like the way I access it now really, a lot of times is just me playing music by myself, and like I kind of get into this meditative trance like state, and like I feel different. But a lot of times it's stuff like this too, like I have really good deep conversations about God and stuff, and I come out of it and I feel like life breathed into me, and I feel, I literally feel different. Like
uplifted.
And you literally feel like kind of almost a high in a sense, it's like, but it's so much better and cleaner and clearer, and
like I was in your little antechamber room in there back when this was Pat's house.
Yeah.
We did this meditation, it's like a 20-minute long meditation. I come out of it and I felt like I'd popped 2 bars.
Yeah.
And like it was one of the trippiest experiences of my life. I'm sitting and I've been coming to this little meditation meeting, this men's meditation meeting on Sundays.
Right.
One of those beautiful things about recovery too is those guys did not know me well at all. And it was like, yeah, come along. We'll tell you everything about our lives.
Yeah.
And we'll also listen to you and tell you input if you want it. And I remember I was sitting on the couch in there, looking out that window, feeling that exact feeling you're talking about. And I noticed, in your neighbor's house, behind this house, there's a Douglas fir tree in their backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not native to West Texas at all. It is the Colorado state tree.
Really?
Yeah, that is the
I think
type
I know
of pine
it.
forest.
Yeah, I know exactly the tree you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's huge.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what? I've been coming here for 3 months. This tree has obviously been here longer than I have.
All right.
But yet again, that synchronicity.
Yeah.
One time, dude, there's just so many examples of it.
Right.
And like, with playing music, with meditating that way, with conversations. I remember talking to Stuart B, and like for him, meditation was like doing tasks and focusing on every little detail of it.
Right.
Or Ryan B was playing music and also writing. And, for some people it's yoga and Tai Chi, and for others it's like me, it's like sitting completely still and just dedicating that time, which in of itself is also an action because it takes effort to do that, right?
See, I think our problem as a species is that we are all doing these things, and like we're all pursuing that feeling, but like we don't know how to communicate to our fellow man. Like this is a spiritual experience. Like
I think we cop out soon too. I think that's the issue too.
Right.
Is I think we sell ourselves short for just the experience.
Right.
Because think about it this way. It's like, it's almost like living life. It's almost like living life, and like Emmett Fox talks about this in Sermon on the Mount, which is an excellent spiritual book. It comes from a Christian perspective. If someone's willing to drop for even a little bit, their prejudice and pretension, like I was told to do, it's a beautiful reading. And he talks about how this idea of heaven is just experiencing a closeness to a higher power, and what it is, it's a matter of perception. He talks about that the plight of mankind is we are like colorblind men in a rose garden. Just because we cannot perceive the beauty doesn't mean it's not there. It's an issue of perception, not existence, right? And for a lot of those things, I feel like the plight of mankind is like such a broad, ambiguous term for me to use, but still, it's that people sell themselves short, that those spiritual experiences, those moments, those feelings, that's what's That's what you aim for.
Right.
When in reality, that's more like being colorblind in a rose garden and getting these snapshots of seeing what it could be like, right?
Right.
But then you offer that man full color vision. He goes, no, I'm good with just the snapshots, because it takes a lot of work. And like, I'll never have that perfect perception, right? But I think like something I've done in my own life, I've seen others do in some capacity, I know I have definitely done, is like search relentlessly for those highs to change how I feel in sobriety through spirituality. It has led to a lot of amazing growth.
Right.
But like, that in of itself is not nearly a large enough end to last 60 fucking years of life on this earth.
Right.
You know? And so for me, like, I definitely agree. I think people don't talk about it enough. For sure. There's like this barrier of pride and kind of oversensitivity. Because every time people talk about God, they think that you have to adopt the opinion they're talking about. And that's not at all true.
No.
But I think also people like myself, like I'll do this too, is sell myself short. And think that those experiences are what's to be aimed for. When in reality, life has those every single day in every single capacity. You know, because if I think about it, I don't cause those experiences. Like, we don't sit down and start talking with the intention of, we're going to talk until we feel God.
Yeah.
Like, we just talk and it starts to happen.
Right.
So, like, to me, like, theory, for audio listeners, I use quotes. Like, God, like, connection to God is not a feeling, but it's an action, it's experience.
Right.
And, like, the feeling is just the byproduct of it.
Right.
But it's through living that's found. Because why else would this higher power give me a life if it's not to find it through that living of itself?
Right.
Which is kind of like a far out idea for me, because it means getting the fuck out of my head, which I hate doing. I love building a little palace of Travis's sadness and control in my head where I think life happens up here.
Right.
But it really doesn't. It happens all around. You talked about that with the desk and the molecules and the atoms and everything and memories and past, future.
Yeah.
The trippy spiral and everything, right? But, you know, it's in that, for me, like, it's in that living. It's in those moments.
Right.
Like, for me, that's why sponsorship was fucking dope and still is. Is because you sit down with some dude, you have no fucking clue who he is. He doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know me. You know, we sit down, we talk for an hour. I just tell him how badly I've messed up my life. He tells me how badly he's messed up his. And for some reason, we both feel hope.
Right.
What other situation in life do I sit down with a stranger, tell them how much of a failure I am, and I feel good?
Yeah.
Like, if that's not God or higher power, I don't know what is. Or even being an addict, like a first step experience, admitting I'm powerless and unmanageable. Shorter words like Russell Brand, I'm fucked. Right? Why is it at that point I felt more hope than I had in 3 years?
Yeah.
Like, over the 3 years of using, it was this progressive spiral downward into less power and less manageability. I don't think I really ever had power and manageability.
Right.
But it became increasingly clear I had less and less and less, right? At the lowest point is when I felt the best I had in 3 years. Not the highest, not some way in the middle, the bottom.
Right.
Because that was the experience, that was living, that was getting out of denial and thought and into the truth of reality.
Yeah, and like, you know, I used to think this, and I still do in some sense, but I've never really tried to, like, you know, express it outside of Christianity. But it like, when I was like super Christian, I used to kind of hold this belief, like, we were created to experience like our oneness with God.
Sorry,
you're good. He just burped in the mic. If you couldn't tell. But we were created as our souls, our consciousness is part of the oneness of God and oneness of all things. And like, because of our human form, of our physical body, we feel disconnected to that. So we are really like created to be kind of addicted to the spiritual experiences, addicted in a sense, but we replace it with drugs and alcohol because we forgot or don't know how to connect that way. You know what I mean? Like, and, you know, our lives are we're so divided in ourselves and from everything because we live our lives in our bodies, through our mind, through our eyes, and we only live in the experience of our perspective. Yeah. But really, we are bigger and greater and connected to everything. Yeah. And we forget that.
It's really interesting to be a human being, and you live in a physical world and a reality that objectively, well, people can argue this in the comment section for sure, but for the sake of the argument, you live in two worlds, right? Like, your body exists in this physical world that is a reality, right? If someone throws a softball at me and it hits me, right, that's not an issue of my subjective perception necessarily as much as objective reality impacting it, right? Right. But then there's the second
physical
world of
reality,
living in which happens entirely through my brain.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And like,
that's
the
other
dissonance,
dimension.
I think another plight of mankind right, is the dissonance between those two things.
Right.
The dissonance between subjective perception and what actually seems to occur. You know, and you'll see that a lot. Like in psychology, there's cognitive dissonance. People that are health nuts, but they smoke a cigarette. There's that weird feeling inside.
Just cigarette smoking alone is cognitive dissonance. You know it's bad for you.
Drug addiction is
that's literally
dissonance.
The most basic example of cognitive dissonance.
Drug addiction, alcoholism, smoking cigarettes, like all of that is cognitive dissonance because it's feeling good about dying.
Right.
We're feeling good while dying. Feeling good while actually physically being worse.
Right.
Do you mind if I text my sponsor?
No, go ahead. And like I feel like religion and like religious ideologies can be cognitive dissonance too. You know, it's like, yes, I believe God is everything, but it's like I also believe that like I have to follow this one religion to be in line with God. And it's like, oh, well, if God made everything and God made all of us and God made every religion, then right? And like, you know what I mean? So that's part of my hang up is with religion and stuff. And like, I just have too many questions. You know, I have like
the question is then, does it matter?
Right. Exactly.
Like
I don't think it matters.
The differences in conceptions and all that. Like, yeah, you know, if it's one God of anything, then okay. And then, I mean, you touched on this too, right? It's like your personal belief is, okay, I'm going to live as what I believe is best as I can and follow kind of the rule of harmony and dissonance. Dissonance is I'm not doing it right. Harmony is I am.
Right.
Like letting go of guilt and shame. I even think like there's this level of serenity I don't know if I'll ever reach, quite honestly. If it's realistic or just another one of my like
unachievable
rabbit
goals,
hole obsessions. So I can feel like I'm doing something sometimes, where I think people just don't even care anymore. I look at guys like Buddy G, you know,
who I'm gonna have on very soon.
Oh hell yeah, dude! That's gonna be a great episode. Because if you try to have this type of conversation with him, he can just be like, "Who cares?"
Yeah.
Who cares?
Right.
I remember I was talking about character defects. He was like, "So what do you do if you get into this character defect?" He called me out. I read off my the situation like resentment and fear. He said, "What's the character defect for that?" I was like, "Oh, selfishness, self-centeredness, and concern." He said, "No. What did you do?" I don't know what you mean. He's like, what would you call someone that did what you did? I was like, fake. He goes, oh, poser. So you're a poser. I was like, whew. I get hurt, but there was this relief to it. I was like, okay, no,
right.
Thank God someone said it. 2.5 years in, someone said it, you know?
All right.
And he's like, so what do you do about it? And I was like, well, I pray. And he goes, no, don't waste God's fucking time with something you can do. And I'm like, whoa, what? And he's like, yeah, stop being it. I was like, what do you mean stop being fake? He's like, stop?
Yeah.
Like, it's so simple.
All right.
Because I'll get caught up in these abstract questions that I love.
Right.
Like, it's a beautiful aspect about life. But there's times when I can't. You know, there's times when, like, shit has to be simplified to doing it or not doing it. It's,
right.
Yet again, like, one of those weird kind of, like, black and white versus gray and, like, abstract versus practical.
Yeah.
But I just want to share that because it's funny, too, because, like, you know, me, Mr. Big Book AA Recovery, and I don't even know fucking most of it the way he does.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't even fucking know what it said about nightlies.
Right.
You know, I'm sitting outside with him when I asked him to sponsor me. We were talking about nightlies because I was lazy not doing them. And he's like, tell me what that page says exactly. I'm like, okay. We sit down, you start writing. He goes, where does it say in there to write it out? And I was like, it doesn't. He's like, so I need to answer these questions. He goes, where does it say in there that you answer those questions? I go, It's like direct, out of the book, simple. You do it or you don't.
I didn't know that. It didn't say not to write. I've always felt like writing out nightlies was inferred from the text, but I didn't know.
That's the key word, right?
Yeah.
Inferred.
Yeah.
The question is who's inferring it then, right?
True.
Me.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't say write it out. It says do it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't even say that I answer it. It says I ask myself these questions. It doesn't say I then answer them. I just ask them. Which for me has been a cool experience when I actually do my nightlies, because then I sit there and I just pray and I ask those questions without trying to think about it. And like instantly things will pop up.
Right.
You know, probably not the things I would have selected either.
Right.
Because they're usually more embarrassing. Like, I'm a petty bitch today.
Right.
You know, if I had a dime for every time one of my nightlies should have included I was a petty bitch today, I think grad school would be safe. I think I'd be okay for grad school.
Did you get into grad school?
I will find out in January.
Cool.
If
I'm sure you will.
If I made it for the interview. Well, I only applied to one program, Tech's MFT program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so all the eggs in that basket. We'll find out. In January, I was talking to Will about it today. That's actually why I was late to the podcast. I was talking to Will in the parking garage. I had to apologize to him for being an ass earlier, and he didn't even care because he's like, I didn't notice. Anyways, besides the point.
You're good, yeah.
I was talking about the MFT program, which he's a part of currently.
Oh.
He's like, yeah, they'll probably let you know in January because interviews are happening early this year in like February.
Nice. Awesome, man.
So I'll just spend Christmas break working 50 hours a week and trying not to think about that. What are your plans? So you got the rest of undergrad. You got another, 3 years?
2.5.
2.5 years?
3.
What's your major? I've never actually asked you. So it's CFAS. Okay. You're going for that LCDCI?
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, I don't know. I mean, my goal for the next couple of years is to tour every break of school I get and try to get this degree and then hopefully be a rock star after I graduate.
Bro, what are your streams sitting at right now for Indigo?
We had 24,000 this year.
I remember like going to Jake's when there was maybe 20 of us in the crowd.
Yeah, it's getting there. I mean,
dude, no, like
that's what's so shitty.
Where you've been packed and like people have worn Indigo t-shirts. People not in recovery have worn Indigo t-shirts to your show, which means they've gone to a previous one, bought a shirt there, gone home, kept it, come back to the show wearing your shirt.
Oh, honestly, we have way more fans of normies than people in recovery. People in recovery,
because I remember when I started going, like it was like 10 of us from the door. Mm-hmm. And some normies, and like it was a huge part of my early recovery, man, was watching open stage.
Yeah,
that was like 20.
It's growing, man. It's getting there. I mean, it's
fucking awesome.
We're still in the building stages, and we're working on a release right now. And in February, we're gonna do another release, and then my 3-year party, and then March we have a tour plan.
When is your 3-year party?
I haven't set a date yet, but it'll be probably
3 years is January, right?
February 9th.
February 9th. Okay.
So it's probably gonna be the end of February, but. That'll be our next big show. So.
Fuck whatever girl I'm seeing at that time. Valentine's Day's out the window. Let's do that.
Yeah.
She can deal with it.
All right.
You can either come with or not.
My girlfriend's birthday is February 7th. My sobriety date is February 9th. And then
my birthday's February
Valentine's
6th.
Day. Really?
Yeah,
that's
dude,
crazy.
February's a good month. And I was laughing earlier because you were talking about your shows and that finally taken off. And I feel grateful because I got to see a lot of that. Like I just got to be lucky enough to be there. But I also laughed because I make an ass of myself every one of your shows.
Nah, I would say
that. I do it on purpose. I just sit at the front and I go, play iron. Every time.
No, I appreciate like friends who come and support us so much, man. I mean, it's silly though, like go back to the self-worth. Like, I get our data from Spotify of our streams for the year, and it's like 29,000 or something, and I'm like, damn, like I could
have been more.
Yeah, and then I see like Getter gets like 7.9 million, and I'm like, oh, we're not really doing much.
Look at Bruno Mars, man. I'm like, I don't know if I can cut it.
And it's like 35 countries listen to our music, and I'm like, man, but Getter had like 79 countries, or whatever, and like it's so silly that like even with these accomplishments that the average person's like, dude, that's really awesome. I'm like, yeah, but it's not good enough. Like, I'm not doing good enough.
I'm not good enough. Boy, I don't have enough cookie points. I'm the same way.
It's pathetic, dude. And like, I know that I'll always be that way a little bit. And like, but I've gotten to the point with my mental health and like recovery and everything that I can laugh at it. Like how silly it is. How like, I don't know. It's funny because like with social media, especially, like there's a lot of stuff that I do just by myself and it's like purely for self-validation. You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm the same way.
And
I just usually make it someone else's problem through a conversation. I'm a little old, I guess. Not in age, but just in behavior. Behavior's a weird thing. I don't understand that like all the kids my age that are 21, you don't ask for people's numbers anymore.
No, you just ask for their Snapchat. Yeah.
It's fucking weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. I get it. At the same time, I'm just staunchly against it.
Right.
Like, no, I want to do it my way.
Right.
But yeah, self-worth, man. I mean, like, that kind of brings us to the topic of, like, the lethality of scoreboards.
Oh, yeah.
Scoreboarding.
I know that it's been rumored that Instagram had talks about, like, taking down
I thought they were still doing that. Did people, like, riot against it,
I don't know. I don't know if they've decided to do it. I don't really keep
Maybe
up
they decided they wouldn't be profitable anymore.
Right.
Well, I mean, they've run at a deficit since their inception, but still.
Well, they're owned by Facebook now, so. But
God damn it.
You didn't know that?
God damn it.
They've been owned by Facebook for years, like 2 years.
God damn it.
I know, that's what's so funny. Everybody only uses Instagram. I'm like, dude, it's owned by Facebook. But
God, stop.
I use it all.
Dear Mark Zuckerberg, stop.
Zuck!
The Zook lizard boy.
Man, I really appreciate you coming to do this, and I feel like we hit. And I'm glad that you were the first person in on like me trying to kind of change the format a little bit. Like I feel like up until this is the 10th episode, by the way. So thanks for doing that. Number 10, baby.
Bunch of tens
up until
here.
now, I feel like I'm still trying to get a hang of this whole thing.
Yeah, you're breaking into it.
Yeah, like I said before we started recording, like my whole goal is just try to like bridge the gap between all my normie friends and homies and my recovery homies. And I feel like a lot of people I see at shows and other stuff could benefit from hearing these stories of recovery, Like that's the thing is like there's a lot of people in the world who like struggle with substance abuse.
Yeah.
But it doesn't ever get bad enough for them to go to rehab or AA.
There's also a lot of people in recovery that kind of stay away from quote unquote traditionally normie environments because they have the fear of judgment and all that, Like being in recovery is just another aspect of being a human being. I mean, it's very similar in a sense, to being homosexual or to being of a particular religion. Like it is a vital, important part of one's character, but it is a part of one's character. Like someone
it has to be your whole identity.
Yeah, my name is Travis and I'm a person in recovery. I am not a person in recovery who happens to be Travis.
Yeah.
Like it's a part of the identity itself. Right. It doesn't have to be all of it.
Right.
And most certainly from an outside perspective of labeling and scoreboarding a bit too. Just a piece of it.
Right.
Like yes, I'm in long-term recovery. I don't drink. I don't get high.
Right.
Trying to find time sobriety again, whatever that looks like, and sex addiction too.
Right.
You'd also catch me on tech campus wearing a gaudy fucking velour tracksuit, smoking a cig and talking to anyone about anything.
Oh yeah.
Or like at a pizza joint or at a fucking Cane's at 2 a.m. because I've been out late and just laughing.
All right.
Or you can find me in a bar.
Yeah.
With friends. Going dancing or going to one of your shows.
I feel sad for people who are so scared to, like, who are in recovery. I feel like there's people in recovery who are scared to go out to shows or anything at bars because, like, it's not even like they're worried that they're going to drink. They're worried that somebody that they used to fuck with or used to party with or drink with, like, is going to see them. Yeah. And, then that invalidates their recovery, which I get that, but it's
the
also
reputation management of it.
But that's also like you're not really living in freedom if you can't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying that like you should be in recovery and you should go to bars every night of the weekend. Like you don't have to do that. You know?
But the book is explicitly clear. We should go to those things when we have a good reason.
Right.
And there's someone in my life that I know that isn't from Lubbock, and we went to see a movie that in like part of the movie there was like a 25-second scene that included cocaine use.
Yeah.
And, other parts of the movie had, like, some pill use and some alcohol abuse, right? And, like, we're leaving the movie theater, and, later on I find out that person was, like, super triggered by it. And they have, like, multiple years clean, And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on there? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but more in the sense of just, like, that's the type of fear that holds people back from more growth is, like...
Right.
I didn't get sober so I could walk out of a movie theater halfway through because I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
I didn't get sober so I could be invited to go to a wedding and go, oh, shit, I can't because there's an open bar.
Very little triggers me. There is only one thing that actually triggers me, and it's when somebody on screen puts a needle into their arm, and I get a physical reaction to it. So I have to like close my eyes, but I'm not gonna like leave or quit watching what I'm watching. But like, I do get in like 3 years in almost, like I still get a physical reaction. Like I literally my like arms kind of shake and like I feel it in my stomach. It's weird. It's like, and like I used to do that every fucking day, 6 times a day. It's weird how like I can't physically watch it happen on screen. Like it literally makes me feel fucking weird.
Dude, I get that. Like, I like spicy food.
Yeah.
Like a lot of other alcoholics. There's like a chemical similarity. It's so good.
Fucking pickled jalapenos, bro. That's just candy, boy. It's really not even that spicy, but it's
Cholula on anything.
Oh my god, Cholula's my shit, bro.
You want to talk about shooting? Let's shoot that Cholula.
My fucking caseworker in treatment, he was like, hey, you got some... I was like working in the kitchen and he was like, hey, you got some Cholula? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I brush my teeth with that shit. And he was like this like cholo, like prison gang type dude.
Yeah, I went to treatment in New Mexico, so we put hatch green chili on fucking everything.
Dude, green chili is a shit.
But, part of my story was like snorting pills. Like not for very long.
Right.
I didn't get pills that often that I could snort because snorting alprazolam's a waste
face
of
feel
time.
that's kind of similar to eating spicy food.
Or like when spicy food gets in your nose and it burns right there. Yeah, and I was like, so like I've been getting real congested lately. And I don't know why, but constantly throughout the day I find myself just going like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Or I'd say the only other time I've really felt something Like the only other times I've really felt like the trigger, like the physical reaction would be, there was one time I had like 6 months clean. I was dating this girl and her friend was moving to Austin and they're doing a going away party. I was living at the door still. And I went out with her to this person's house for this party and they just had like this kitchen island just covered in liquor bottles, right? And like I'm watching people pour cups and take drinks and all that. And I came in at one point and no one else was in there except me. I'm looking at the counter and I started to feel the warm in my chest.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, oh. So sometimes stuff like that happens.
Right.
So for me, like I didn't pray and meditate that morning. I wasn't as spiritually fit as I could have been. So I wound up calling something. I think I called someone to get my shit straight. Yeah, I walked out front of the house, called someone, got okay, came back in, then I was fine. There's definitely such things as triggers for trauma, for mental illnesses.
Right.
Without like a real solution to live in, there's triggers for addiction. But I think my personal faith is excluding like really specific physical instances. Triggers are mostly bullshit for addiction.
Right.
It just I don't know. That was what I was told, and that wound up being my experience.
I get that for sure. I feel like it's, part of it's fear, and part of it is like kind of an excuse to be living in fear. You know what I'm saying?
There's I think, and you got to define the difference between what people colloquially say as triggers and then what a trigger actually is. Because, like, no matter how recovered you are, there's a such thing as a neurological trigger. Right.
That's like me happen. Seeing somebody shoot up on screen and it triggers a physical reaction. Like, that's literally a trigger.
There's so many different scientific studies. For some reason, science really loves experimenting on cocaine addicts.
Yeah.
They fucking love it, dude. Like, everything.
That's all Freud followers.
Dude, yeah. It's like, it's just like in our study, we cued cocaine addicts with images of cocaine use. And it's like, you don't do anything else. They're like, cokeheads must be the worst.
We gave a rat 750 grams of cocaine.
Welcome to Weird, Fat, and Sober. We're here to talk about Rat Park. For anyone out there that doesn't watch Rat Park, it's pretty cool. But if you've been through treatment, you know what Rat Park is, and it's kind of like a little inside joke of like, we all
know what Rat Park is.
We all know about Pleasure Unwoven. We all know about Rat Park.
Especially if you're pursuing a degree in psychology or
Brene Brown. Yeah. Well, I can't talk shit on it, dude. I went through that breakup, and it was a couple days after. Yeah. And I've been getting suggestions for a while to like watch Brene Brown specials, and I watched it on YouTube.
Oh, she's great.
Dude, sure. I'm not at all ashamed to admit that I laid in bed watching Brene Brown on my phone. Yeah. And I was just crying.
Oh, she's great.
Telling myself, Travis, I need to love you. And like for like an hour. This is what I needed to go through, you know? This is what I needed.
No, I get it. That's great, man. It's good shit, man. Well, that's an hour and 50 minutes, bro. Whoop, whoop. So thanks so much for doing this, man. And maybe the 20th or 30th episode you can come back on.
Just come back every 10 for a check-in. All right. Yeah, I'll just check in at episode 20 for the story of the ice cream truck driver. 20 or 30.
Oh, I forgot about that.
We should just do a stories episode at some point. Yeah. Like deep conversations, but then also just like a stories episode.
I kind of want to transition in from like, because like up until now it's been chronological. Like, tell me your story, and it's like, there's a lot of like stuff that I don't think people really care about if I go that route. Like, how was your childhood? But like, I'm trying to like this episode I think was perfect as far as like we just had a conversation about like what led to your like addiction and recovery, and we really went pretty deep on God stuff, which is awesome. So, I'd love to have you back on. We'll talk about the ice cream truck. We didn't really get into your SAA stuff. No. So maybe that's next time.
Yeah, when I'm more stable in that program, I'd love to talk about it. Right now, it's more just a shit show, to be quite honest.
No, I'm not going to. That's really tough. I have other friends in Sex Addicts Anonymous.
It's different, man.
It's definitely difficult.
It's wild to transition from like substance abuse recovery, keep doing that, and then find yourself in the same like unwilling indifference and be like, what? I know this works already though. Yeah. So that's definitely something to talk about for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. This was dope. This is a cool conversation. I didn't read the script taped to the floor once.
It says here. No.
Now, cue laugh.
I thought about doing that in the intro, just like having like a piece of paper and like just like a lie on it about the person. Like it says here that you actually were charged with child abduction.
What was the title for Marcus's?
I don't remember.
Cocaine and truck driving. He was like,
I I can't remember
seeing it. It was like
I can't remember
Marcus
the name of
Evan, cocaine truck driving.
something like that.
Yeah.
I try to come up with good names for him, but
Love it.
All right,
Thank you
man.
for having me on, Dan. I love you.
of course,
man.
I love you too,
appreciate it.
man. All right, thanks, y'all.